I am freezing cold, wearing 2 pairs of socks and slippers, and you know what's gonna help with that? A dessert that is served room temperature at best. Hello everybody, welcome back to my studio, welcome back to my kitchen, welcome back to my channel. My name is Amanda, and I've got a good one for you today. Allow me to set the scene for you, okay? It's the middle of January, it's freezing cold, I'm snowed into my apartment, and I have just settled down with a nice cup of hot chocolate and a bunch of magazines to get some inspiration for my next video. I'm coming up empty. Nothing is really hitting me or striking my fancy, if you will, until I take a nice big sip of hot chocolate. I look down and I say, wow, this would make a really good dessert. Somebody should make this into a dessert. And guess what, folks? As of today, that somebody is me. Hot chocolate is not a revolutionary flavor idea. It's quite literally just chocolate and marshmallow. So I wanted to do something kind of a little bit different that wasn't just gonna be like cake or cupcakes or something like that. And we all know how much I love tarts and tartlets and stuff. So today I decided to make a double chocolate tart with a toasted Swiss meringue topping. I worked really hard on this one. I'm very excited to share it with you guys. So this recipe at its core is just 3 different components. So we have a chocolate sucree, so a chocolate like tart shell. We have a dark chocolate ganache, super simple run-of-the-mill ganache, and then we have a classic Swiss meringue. I made an Italian meringue with the first tart recipe that I did, so if you want to learn how to make Italian meringue, check that video out. And today I'm going to teach you guys how to make Swiss meringue. As always, the full recipe and method of prep will be on my blog, which you'll be able to find down below. And without further ado, let's get into this recipe. First, you're gonna wanna make your chocolate sucree. A sucree is essentially sweetened, enriched, very short dough. It's really common in tart recipes like this one. The dough itself and how it's made and how much it's worked is kind of in between a pie dough and a cookie dough. You work the butter into the dry ingredients more than you would a pie dough, but you don't really cream it quite as much as you would like a cookie dough. It's kind of in the middle. While you can use a food processor or a stand mixer to make this, today we're gonna be just using our hands, and I find that doing so kind of helps you to keep a better eye on the sucree and a better eye on the dough to make sure that you're not overworking it. Because like I said, you don't really wanna work it too much. First things first, you're gonna wanna get all of your dry ingredients into a bowl. So that will be your flour, salt, sugar, and cocoa powder. Just kind of give that a good mix with like a fork or something like that, like whisk it together, whatever you want. Next, we're gonna be introducing our cold butter. This was just straight from the fridge. I cut it up and put it straight into the bowl this way. This will help so that the butter doesn't just straight up melt in your hands, because you are gonna work it, but you don't want it to be super soft quite yet. So I just cut it up into pieces and kind of squished the butter in between my fingers and just kind of worked it into the dry ingredients until it resembled kind of a coarse, mealy kind of texture. It should kind of look breadcrumby. You can give the bowl a shake, kind of just back and forth, so that all of the big lumps of butter kind of rise to the top. And you want to make sure that you get those and squish those down. You don't want any big lumps of butter remaining, so just kind of use your hands, work through it, get it all mixed in, and then we're just gonna add our egg. So I mixed the egg in kind of the same way, I guess, that you would mix an egg into a pasta dough. I made a well in the middle of my like butter and dry ingredient mixture, cracked the egg into there, and then just used my fork to kind of slowly introduce the dry ingredients in with the egg. Obviously the fork is only going to get you so far, but do your best to kind of mix everything together and make sure everything is properly hydrated. Eventually you are going to have to move over to your hands and kind of squish everything together. Give it a good knead for just a few seconds, so you're not really trying to work the dough or develop any gluten or anything like that, but just to make sure that everything's properly hydrated, properly mixed together, and there's no large butter clumps left. It's gonna look pretty shaggy. It might not fully hold together pretty well. It might not be a full ball, and that is totally fine. Just so long as everything is incorporated properly, you're good to go. You can stop kneading and stop working the dough. Then we're going to pull some plastic wrap out, just dump the dough or whatever you have, however shaggy it is, dump it onto the plastic wrap and use that plastic wrap to kind of press it and form it into a flattened disc. This is your finished sucree. This is your finished dough. We're gonna leave it in the fridge to chill for about an hour-ish. If you're planning on making this ahead, this is a good point to do that, because you can leave it in the fridge for, I don't know, like a day or two if you're planning that far out in advance. But leave it in the fridge for at least an hour at minimum, because you're trying to relax the dough and keep the butter cold. After your dough has chilled, we're gonna prep it for a blind bake. Blind baking is something that is commonly done with pies or tarts where the filling is not also cooked in the oven. In this case, our filling is a ganache that it does not really need to be cooked at all, but our tart shell still does need to be. So we need to put something in the empty pie shell so that it doesn't just kind of puff up and close up so that there's no space. We're gonna kind of try and keep it as flat and even as possible. So there's two things that we're gonna do to try and kind of help and encourage that. So first, set your dough out on a floured surface. We have to roll it out, obviously. This dough, because we subbed out some of the flour for cocoa powder, is a lot more fragile and sensitive than a regular sucree might be. So be very gentle with it, very careful with it. Roll it out, turn it, roll it out. You know, make sure your surface is sufficiently floured so that nothing sticks to anything. And you're gonna wanna try to work it, you know, as gently as possible. I'm using a 9-inch tart pan for this recipe, so I made sure to roll my dough out to be at least 9 inches plus an extra inch all the way around. I just used the pan to like measure that way, but you want to make sure you have an extra inch so that the dough can go up the sides of the tart pan. I just used the bottom to kind of help me get the dough into the pan. Normally I would roll the dough over the rolling pin or just kind of like fold it in quarters and pick it up, but again, because this dough is so fragile, I don't really want to like lift it or put like a lot of weight on it or like stress on it. Once you get it into the pan, you know, try and get all the excess off if possible. Use the extra dough to patch up any holes or any cracks. Work quickly but carefully. You don't really want to do any more damage than will already probably develop. I just made sure that the dough went all the way up the sides of the tart pan and then some, like over a little bit. And then I used my rolling pin to roll across the top of the tart pan to cut away that excess. And this just made sure that, you know, the entire thing was even, the entire thing was level. Once your tart pan is lined and good to go ahead and stick it in the fridge for just like 15-20 minutes. At this point, go ahead and preheat your oven to about 350 degrees. And once it's chilled and firmed and ready to go, we are going to prep it for the blind bake. So the first thing that we're gonna do is dock the bottom of the tart shell. So just take a fork or, I don't know, anything pointy and poke a bunch of holes in the bottom of the tart shell. This will prevent any like large bubbles from kind of forming in the base of the tart. The next thing we're gonna do is put our pie weights in. So go ahead and line your shell with parchment paper or foil. I prefer parchment paper, and also something that helps me to get the parchment paper into the tart shell is to crinkle it up a few times before I put it in. It just helps to soften the parchment and help it get into like the corner, like where the bottom and the sides meet. It helps me to get it fully flush into those corners. Generally, proper pie weights are like ceramic or metallic, I believe. Ceramic pie weights are really good for conducting heat, and they make sure that the center or like the middle of the tart shell still kind of bakes evenly, even though it's all covered up. However, There are so many household things that you can use instead of ceramic pie weights if you don't want to shell out for those. I've used rice before, I've used dry beans before. Some people use like literal nuts and bolts or like loose change as long as it's clean. Today, I used unpopped popcorn kernels because for some reason that's all that I had in my pantry. And it worked. I was scared that the popcorn was gonna pop in the oven, but it didn't. So yeah. So we're gonna pop our ready to go tart shell onto a baking sheet of some sort and throw it into a preheated oven. It's gonna bake for 12 minutes-ish or until the edges start to look cooked and like dried almost. And then you're gonna remove your pie weights, so whatever you use, just remove the whole thing, parchment and all, and bake it again for another 12 to 15 minutes or until the center and the inside also looks dried and set. Go ahead and leave the tart shell in the ring to cool completely. So while that is cooling, we can go ahead and make our ganache. This ganache is literally like 4 ingredients. It's so freaking easy to make. I don't know if ganache is like widely perceived as something difficult to make, but I promise you it's super easy. You're gonna want to use a good quality chocolate if you can. In a ganache, there's no real like added flavors. All you're tasting is the chocolate for the most part. So if you use like a low quality chocolate or, you know, a baking chocolate or chocolate chips or anything like that, that like waxy, oily feeling and taste that you get from that chocolate is just gonna be amplified in the ganache. For a like semi-sweet, if you use like a 58% chocolate, that would be really good. If you want to go full dark, I would use around a 70% chocolate. That's what I used. Pop that into your bowl, and then you're gonna want to heat the cream up on the stove on like a low medium heat. You're not trying to cook it or really bring it to a boil. You're just trying to slowly heat it up. You're just gonna want to bring it hot enough so that it starts steaming, or it like looks like it's just about to start simmering or just about to start boiling. All you're trying to do is heat it up so that it's hot enough to melt the chocolate. So once your milk is like steaming, it's hot, it's ready to go, just pour it over the chocolate. Let it sit for like a minute or two so that the chocolate can start to melt. And then go ahead in with your whisk and just start whisking it together. The heat from the cream will melt the chocolate naturally. If it doesn't work and you still have a couple of pieces of chocolate that are like whole and chunky, you can go ahead and pop it on a double boiler and like slowly bring that heat up. While the ganache is still hot, go ahead and pop your butter and your salt in. The butter should be in small-ish enough pieces because again, the heat from the cream will melt the butter into the ganache, and this will help so that when the ganache sets up, it's still kind of like a malleable, like cuttable mass, and it's not like super rock solid or super soupy. So as soon as all of the ingredients are mixed together and completely combined, I just poured it straight into the cooled tart shell and let the entire thing set in the fridge for about an hour or two. At this point, once the ganache is set and chilled and everything, you have a chocolate tart, you have a double chocolate tart, you're done. Throw some sea salt on top, you know, maybe throw some caramel on top or something like that, and that is a finished product. That is a finished and completed tart. However, what is good hot chocolate without good marshmallows? I know it might seem like meringue is the only thing that I like to put on tarts. It's not the only thing, it's just my favorite thing. Now we're gonna make Swiss meringue to go on top of the tart. The tart can just stay in the fridge and chill and hang out and whatever while we work on the Swiss meringue. In Italian meringue, you make a like regular, just whip your egg whites and then add your cooked sugar, and that is what cooks the egg whites. With a Swiss meringue, you combine your sugar and your egg whites and you cook it on a double boiler so that it cooks the egg whites that way and heats up that way. If you have a stand mixer, put the egg whites and your sugar into the bowl of the stand mixer. If you don't have a stand mixer and you're just using a hand mixer, put your egg whites and your sugar either in a metal or a glass bowl. Glass does not conduct heat as well as metal does. So when we go to whip it and we go to actually create the meringue, it's gonna take a little bit longer for the meringue to cool off, which is fine. It's just something you kind of have to account for and be aware of. So with your egg whites and your sugar in your bowl of choice, whatever you've got, pop it on a saucepan or a pot that has some simmering water in it, or water that's close to a boil or a simmer, and you can go ahead and leave that on like a medium high heat. Basically what's gonna happen is the steam from the boiling or simmering water is going to heat your egg whites and your sugar very slowly, so as not to like curdle or cook anything too fast. I was using a whisk at first to make sure that everything was properly incorporated, but I did switch to a spatula to make sure that I got all of like the loose granules of sugar off the sides. You want to kind of keep it moving while it's cooking. You don't really want to leave this on the stove and then walk away, because what's going to happen is where the egg whites are touching the bowl or even touching the pan, if it's deep enough, it's just gonna cook. You're just gonna have egg whites and sugar in a bowl. It's not gonna be pleasant. You're not gonna be able to recover that and turn that into meringue. It's just gonna be gone. You're looking for a temperature of 160 degrees. So keep mixing it, keep checking it, keep working it. Once you hit 160 degrees, go ahead and remove it from the double boiler. If you're using a stand mixer, pop it on your stand mixer and grab your whisk attachment. If you're using a hand mixer, you know, get that ready and just kind of go for it. We're just gonna whip this on a really high speed continuously. If you're using a hand mixer, don't forget to like move it around the bowl. And basically what we're doing now is cooling the mixture down and incorporating air at the same time. And that's what's gonna take you from a soupy mess to a thick, glossy, shiny, firm meringue. You're shooting for kind of like medium stiff peaks. You want it to be like firm enough and stiff enough so that whatever design or shape or whatever you put on top of your tart, that holds. It doesn't just kind of like glob out all over the place. So you want to go until when you pull your beaters out or the whisk out, the peaks kind of hold. They don't really like, they can be soft enough to like flop around, but you want it to at least hold its shape, whatever shape it creates on your beaters. And at that point, once your tart is, you know, chilled and ready to go, the ganache is firm to the touch so it won't kind of like soup out around your meringue. I decided to do like a cute little like half moon design on top of mine with like a bunch of different shapes and stuff like that. You can do like the artisan like plopping the whole thing on top and like, you know, zhuzhing it out everywhere to make it look like, you know, cool and like avant-garde and stuff like that. There is so much inspiration on like Pinterest and Instagram of like really cool tarts and really cool tart designs. So every good marshmallow is toasted, right? So in order to give it some color and some dimension and also to set the meringue and kind of like protect it a little bit, I went ahead and torched it. I had like a little mini blowtorch that's technically just a lighter. It's not a blowtorch. I used that to torch the top of my meringue and set it, and then I was done. Honestly, I'm really happy with how it turned out. This is like an idea I've had in my head for a while, and then it wasn't until just recently that I like actually decided to kind of develop it. Everything just looks so good and everything is so easy. If you want to take like the Sucree shell and fill it with like an orange curd or like something different, super doable. If you want to use the ganache in like a cake or something like that. All of these components and all of like the parts of this dessert can be used in so many different ways. So if you just kind of want to pull inspiration from like parts of this, you can do so many things with this. I know Valentine's Day is coming up, so if you want to make like a really simple show-stopping dessert for you and your partner, you and your friends, or just you by yourself, I think this is a great idea. But yeah, that's all I've got for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope maybe you learned something or got some inspiration for something else you want to do. If you have any questions or any comments or anything like that, leave them down below. I'll do my best. But like I said, full method of prep and full ingredients list, everything will be on my blog, which you can find in the description. If you make this or make any part of this, tag me and let me know. I'm on Instagram and Twitter and TikTok. I'm on all the social medias. I'm even on Pinterest, so you can hit me up on there if you really want to. I hope you guys are staying safe and warm wherever you are in the world, and I will see you guys soon with another recipe.